Okay. So, just moving from the discussions in the comments that appeared on the last two videos I posted about relating to others. Like I mentioned, it's a popular subject because, of course, all of our problems come from other people. But really ourselves. The kind of main tone I noticed and focus that keeps coming up is emotions, and how it can be tricky to make a distinction between emotions and the self that it seems these emotions are happening to, or the thought narrative. And I'll give you my own experience that might illustrate a little bit about this. Well, I noticed that emotions seem to be physical sensation, very much like an energy that moves through this physical unit. It seems, and as time goes on, as the kind of boundaries and limits of this physical self start to dissolve, the emotions become more and more environmental and more universal. So it seems like in this story, in this narrative of how this seeming self relates to and moves through and interacts with this physical world around it, seems like there's a causal relationship between the emotions that are appearing and the cause for those emotions according to what's happening in the environment and according to the story of this me, this person that is the subject of these emotions. And it seems very tricky to be able to untangle these physical sensations, these emotions, from the mental narrative in time and the story of me. What I noticed was that the narrative, the story, the scaffolding that was built around these emotions generally is an attempt to control for what we feel by judging the emotions, by saying this emotion is bad, this emotion is good, I want less of this, I want more of this. And by building these scaffoldings of thought and narrative around them, we perpetuate them and hold on to them in a certain way. So we're basically saying, I'm going to keep a bit of this to remind me that I don't want this, and I'm going to look out for this using this story of control. And when I see what I think that is that in the future, then this is what I'm going to go do to try and control it. And by doing that, the actual raw sensation of the emotions, the raw emotion itself, is deadened. We are distanced from it. It becomes blunted. We try and avoid it. what I noticed as well was that after the awakening, certain emotions seemed to be tied together with certain thought narratives. So when an emotion did appear, what also appeared was a story, a bunch of repetitive thoughts. It seemed to be linked to that emotion. Same thing the other way around. When a thought narrative appeared, there seemed to be an emotional emotions attached to it. And it kind of went both ways. So the emotion seemed to be stored in the body, or in this body mind, as in it seemed to have accumulated over time, and there seemed to be these blockages in the body that were held together by a scaffolding of thought and narrative. After awakening, the clarity that came from that, and the spaciousness that came from that, allowed these mechanisms to be really seen. And as the narrative and the thoughts come apart and the belief in them fades away, what's left is the emotional accumulation inside the body, and that seems to radiate out through the body and through the environment. And as I explained in previous videos, there was a bunch of physical side effects that came with that. It's interesting, I was talking with someone in the comments about Kundalini, if that's how you say it. And I'd heard this before, although I don't know a lot about it, and I need to do a little bit of research into it. But what is explained with the Kundalini, it seems to be very similar to the experiences that I had with the energetic movement through the body, the kind of free flow of movement of energy through the body, and the kind of clearing out effect and the healing effect. Anyway, I need to look into that. But there becomes, after awakening, or for me after awakening, there became more of a distinction between the physical emotions and directly in the moment, and how that is a very visceral body thing, and the mental narrative that is attached to or is kind of constructed over these emotions, and how that narrative kind of messes with that flow. Things became much more simple, as in it became easier just to allow these emotional charges to flow through the body, and accept that. And later on, as insight matured, you develop a kind of, or at least I developed a kind of a taste for experiencing all the sensory, the sensation flavours, the flavours of sensation, like a kind of connoisseur of emotion. And when they come, there's a curiosity, you just move into them, and you there's a fascination with the mystery of what is this sensation, rather than an aversion or an addiction to or a labelling of certain kinds of emotion. And of course, this little ego guy isn't equipped to, isn't capable of containing this. Of course, this fiction of me can't contain the universe, but it tries to, and as a result of that, it kind of demolishes itself. But in my case, that was a good thing, because it led to the demolition of the illusion. But you become sensitive to these charges, and you become sensitive to everywhere in the environment, and it's all moving within you, with other people as well. It's not my emotion and someone else's emotion. It's all moving within you. So there's an appreciation for these movements, these charges, wherever they appear in experience, and there's an acceptance of that in yourself and in other people, because essentially they're the same thing. There's another thing which I'd never been able to explain, is there's in the sounds and the sight and the taste and the smell, there's emotion in it everywhere. There's an emotional charge in the environment. When I look at something, it's a different type of emotion, I would say. You feel it in the body, but your body is the environment. Your body is the world. This emotional body encompasses absolutely everything, and these charges and these flavours just move within it. It's very hard to explain what I mean by that. I don't really mean anything by it. That's just what's noticed. And like I said, the story and the scaffolding we build around it, the time narrative, blunts the full, like, radiant nature of these emotions, and we're only half experiencing them. But when you can experience the full, raw, nature of the experience of emotion, it's something completely different. And when it's moving within you, you can handle it, and it's not good or bad or anything. It's just a flow, just a movement, but at the same time, that flow and that movement, there's a stillness with it, a steadiness with it, that's never thrown all over the place by these energetic movements. And the momentum continues even after the belief and the stories and the thought forms has been broken. There's still kind of a momentum that carries on with it, that is just seems to be automatic. It just continues through habit. But every time that circuit repeats itself, it loses a bit of power and a bit of it breaks down, and is replaced by just the raw experience. And the raw experience is beautiful. The first time I experienced this was after the death of my father, and the story wasn't there, but the emotions were there and the sadness was there. But without the story and without the ownership, without the strong belief in those thought forms, the emotional experience was beautiful. There was no suffering in it. I could appreciate that emotional experience for what it was, without having to try and control it, without trying to have to avoid it or change it in any way. And there was a deep peace and a deep love within it that wasn't personal. And it just moved how it did. And it was a very healing experience for this mind and body. It wasn't damaging. And as the emotion moved through my experience, I could almost feel the healing going on, if that makes sense. I could almost feel it removing stuck energy in the body. That sounds very strange, but that's how I experienced it at the time. So I think it just requires vigilance, looking out for, when this emotion comes, am I feeling it? Am I avoiding it? Am I distancing myself from it? Am I saying no to it, or am I saying I want more of that and clinging on to it? Because ultimately we can't hold on to the constantly moving expressions of the universe, and any attempt to do that is going to energetically mess with this body. The body doesn't seem to be very good at trying to contain, through time, trying to contain these energetic flows. I think it can cause a lot of physical damage to this physical unit. I could be wrong. I know that sounds ridiculous, and that could be nonsense, but that's my intuition, and that's my experience. When we allow the flow, it has a very healing effect, and I've experienced that healing since becoming aware of this.